Men at the cross. Say men at the cross.
Men at the cross.
This is sweet to me because I was thinking about it. I said, Lord, our theme for the year is at the cross. And God, in his traditional manner, will hook up every month to speak about being at the cross. And March being men's month, you know, I said, okay, God, so you got your men at the cross. How many men were at the cross? And which men do you want to point out that were at the cross? And what do you want to say to the men today about the men who were there at the cross? And I want to tell you that as I prayed about it and meditated upon it, this is what the Lord spoke back to me, is that in this month, I want you to dispel some myths about godly men. The first myth that I want to dispel is that godly men are weak men. Not so. Say godly men are strong.
Godly men are strong.
The second thing that I want to dispel during this month of teachings is that godly men are feminine. Not so. Say godly men are masculine.
Godly men are masculine.
And so as we go forth, men, I want you to hear me when I say that. Because one of the things that really pricked my heart as I was meditating and studying on it, before I knew it, I sent out a text to some of my Christian brothers and preachers and things like that. And I'm like, what are the issues of men around the church? What are the issues of men around Jesus Christ himself? And the answers that came back to me, some of them just blew me out of the water. Because have you ever gone in churches and noticed there's always more women than men?
Yeah.
And that's the God, why would that be, considering when you started the church, the initial students were 12 apostles who were all male men. You know, we're all mankind, and when God created us, he called us all, both Adam, right? It wasn't until the fall, and then Adam broke forth and called her woman, but God called them Adam together, but there was a male man who had a specific purpose, and there was a female man that had another purpose, and together they would help one another and accomplish God's will in the earth. But when Jesus came on the scene, Jesus said, I'm coming into a male-dominant environment, a male-dominant culture, a religion where women were like property, but men had the headship. And so the first students that I want to call are going to be 12 men. And I said, God, if you looked at the church today, I guess you would wonder, where have all the men gone? But Jesus wants us to know there were men at the cross. And so as I depict manhood this month at the cross, I want us to realize that everybody's got to come through the cross. Women don't just come one way and men have a separate entrance into glory. Women don't have one relationship with God, but men have a whole separate criteria relationship. It's all the same. So where are the men? Why aren't the men at the cross? And this isn't a sermon to go, oh, get your husband and we're going to beat him down and we're going to talk about who's not here. No. I want you to really look at the men at the cross. And so I want to give you a little history on the man who was at the cross here. In this text, it says that the disciple whom Jesus loved was at the cross. Now, y'all know Jesus had 12 disciples, and it's always hard for me to remember all 12 of them. So I'm like, Lord, you know, for real, I got to write their names down. But when he called them, it was Peter and Andrew. They were brothers. There was James and John. They are brothers. There's Thomas, Bartholomew, you know, Doubting Thomas, right? Bartholomew, we don't hear much about, but he was there. James, a different James. Thaddeus, there was Simon, and then we know Judas the betrayer, right? All these brothers were at the cross. All these brothers were called by Jesus, I should say. All of them stood under his teaching. All of them were there, and yet at the cross, there was only John. And so I want us to know this. John is the brother of James. He's the son of Zebedee. I tried to find out a little bit of information about Zebedee because it's interesting to me that a man who's never expounded on in the scripture, his name is mentioned about 5 or 10 different times. They kept saying the son of Zebedee, the sons of Zebedee, right? But he was the son of Zebedee. He was the disciple whose mother came to Jesus and requested some VIP seating when he got in his kingdom. Remember, she said, can you promise me that one of my sons will be on one side and one on the other? And Jesus said, can you bear my cross? Can you drink this cup? Can you take the baptism wherewith I'll be baptized? And they said, we can. And Jesus said, indeed you will. But this seat I can't promise you because that's for my Father to ordain who will sit with us. This John was the youngest of the disciples. Isn't that amazing? That the youngest one, you would think one of the older ones who had more experience and more wisdom and maybe even more knowledge would have been at that cross. But no, it was the youngest disciple who was there. He's the one who when Jesus walked by, he was on the boat with his brother and they were working and Jesus said, follow me, and immediately he followed Jesus. So this was a disciple who immediately responded to Jesus, and by the depiction that he was at the cross, he stayed the course to the end. He is also the one disciple that lived a long life, and ironically, he's the only one that died of natural causes. Everybody else was hung upside down, fed to lions, boiled in oil, something terrible happened. They were martyrs for Jesus. But this one lived a long life, and then when he died a natural life, or natural causes. And then I want you to know that he is the disciple who knew that Jesus loved him. Say, he knew that Jesus loved him. And that's important. Because when I begin to say, what's so noteworthy about this man at the cross? And today I know y'all probably saying, she's kind of working from her notes, because I want to tell it to you the way Jesus gave it to me. And he told me to freelance, I'm a freelance on you today. But let me give it to you like he gave it to me. The first thing that was noteworthy about this man, this disciple who was at the cross, is that he followed Jesus. The Bible lets us know that when Jesus called, immediately he went. And he started walking with Jesus. And everywhere Jesus went, he went with Jesus. And let me tell you, when you follow Jesus, men, you become students of Jesus. You become those who learn of Jesus. So when we think about men at the cross today, a lot of times men stay at home. You know, they let the wives go to church, or maybe the children go to church, but they stay at home. And it's because one of the things that I found out when I asked my brothers, what's some of the issues with men around Jesus and around church? One of them texted back to me, and they said, because church is a female experience. Wow. Church is a female experience. And I was like, what in the world? But I'm an educator. So I didn't dismiss it or say, oh, that's phony. No. I said, let me think about this, because I went to male men to find out what the issue, right, with it. And so my teacher mind started rolling. And how many of y'all know that in the education system, most of the special ed participants are males? And do you know that as studies have found, it's because the classroom is geared to girls? So boys get bored. Boys get antsy. Boys start creating their own stuff to do. And when the teacher can't make them stop, the teacher says, he has a learning disability. And they stick them off right into special ed. Nothing wrong with that boy. Nothing wrong with his ability to learn. Nothing wrong with his behavior. He's a male man, engineered differently than a female. Got different interests and different ways of expressing himself. But he gets categorized and clumped, all because he's a male man. And then my mind came back to what the brother said, because church is a female experience. And I said, God, is it true? Have we geared church toward women and forgotten that there are boys and there are men in the congregation? And let me tell you what the Lord began to show me as I thought about that. First of all, followers of Christ should be students of Christ. Followers of Christ should learn Christ's ways, learn Christ's words, learn Christ's thoughts, learn how Christ feels about things, right? That's what following Christ is about. And the church is the place that should teach you God's word. If you follow Christ, you become imitators of Christ. And it made me think of this. When you hang around and you ever had a friend like you in high school especially, and you kind of have a slang or something that everybody says? Maybe you didn't say it at first, but after a while when you hang with them, before you know it, you say it too. Or if there's a mannerism that the group has, before you know it, you pick it up, right? Well, God designed this thing that when you follow him, men and women, you know this to be true. When you follow him, you become an imitator of him. You start to do what he does, do things the way he does it, right? And so you become a carrier of Jesus' teachings when you follow him. But if church is a place that men think is geared to women, why would they think that? And the first thing I want to tell you is that I compare today's church to the church when Jesus was the preacher. Can you imagine going to church and Jesus is the preacher? Jesus. You got the 12 apostles. They're probably really close, right? Then the Bible talks about 70 disciples. They're a little bit further out, but they follow him. And then after that, the Bible talks about the multitude. Sometimes the multitudes were too great to number, right? And so here you got this multitude following. But this is what I want you to see about this man at the cross. He stuck close to Jesus. Men, I want to encourage you that when you become a follower of him, don't follow him and send your family to church, but you stay home, like the multitudes far out. Don't follow him, but never read the Bible. See, because you got to get close to Jesus for a change to take place. And women, you know, we have been taught this and we have mastered this. And I'm going to tell you the difference about women. Women don't mind being told what to do. We don't always do it, but but we don't mind you telling us. It's just kind of our nature. Like, yeah, my mother been telling me stuff, my father been telling me stuff, our society is geared toward our husband probably telling us stuff. We can take it. We might be passive aggressive and not do it, but we can take you telling us. But men don't even want you to be like lording over them and telling them step by step. But when you stick close with Jesus, what happens is y'all remember hearing this when you were younger? Birds of a feather flock together?
Yes.
Assimilation, association brings assimilation. So when men get close to Jesus, can I tell you that you will begin to act like Jesus, think like Jesus, talk like Jesus. You begin to process stuff like Jesus. And I'm going to tell you what's good about that. When you walk close to Jesus, you find out something. You find out Jesus is fearless. Because another answer that I got back when I surveyed the men was, can I still be manly and love Jesus? And it's not a ridiculous question, because when you go in most churches, the guys got flip wrists. They got gentle little mannerisms. They act like the mothers of the church instead of the brothers of the church. So real men say, can I still be manly and love Jesus? But when you stick close to Jesus while following him, you begin to identify that Jesus is fearless. Can I tell you, Satan does not want this message to go forth, but God does. Amen. Because some men going to hear on YouTube, some men going to see on cable, that real men follow him and real men stick close to him. Men get around Jesus and they see his fearless nature, which causes them to be courageous. Why do you say he was fearless? When they said they were going to kill him, y'all remember back in the Old Covenant when Elijah, I believe it was, when Jezebel rose up and said, I'm going to kill you, right? He said he took off running. He got scared. He took off running. When they told Jesus, we're going to kill you, Jesus was like, you can't do nothing to me. When he was being scourged, throwing a crown on his head, being beat, you would think that would make him cow down a little bit, right? But Jesus rose up. He stood strong. No matter how much they beat him, when they talk about the cat of nine tails and how it was with glass and metal and all that stuff, and they whipped him on his back, but he kept getting up, Jesus was strong. Yeah. And when you get close to Jesus, what you find is you don't crumble every time something in life goes wrong. Yeah. What you find is that you don't have to bow down and crumble and be weak. You don't have to be defeated. Doesn't say that hardships won't come. Doesn't say that life won't be rough. But what it says is that he didn't cry about it. Jack Hayford wrote a book one time, How to Live Through a Bad Day. And he was actually talking about the day on the cross, right? And I said, how about that? That was the worst day anybody could live. But when you walk with Jesus and you stick close to Jesus, you begin to find out that Jesus in his fearlessness, when Pilate stood before him and he was asking him some questions and stuff, and he said, you don't want to tell me who you are? Right? Jesus said, whoever you say, right? And then he said, are you the Son of God? Jesus said, you say well. Then he told them at one point, they said that Jesus went to a synagogue and they asked Jesus, they said, by what authority do you do this, right? Now you're surrounded by soldiers and leaders and all this stuff. But Jesus was so courageous that Jesus said, I ain't telling you by my authority. Let me ask you a question. You answer my question, I answer your question. Somebody would have said, but you outnumbered Jesus. You should have just answered their question. But Jesus was courageous. And as I began to think about that, I thought about men who follow God and stick close to Jesus, stick close to his teachings, are men who, when society puts the pressure on you, don't bow down to a gang. Yeah. I don't care, so y'all got guns. So what? You can't kill me unless my Father allows it to happen because it's my time. Isn't that what Jesus told him? When you're on your job and the pressures of life and everybody's trying to get you to conform and to compromise, that's when you stand before them and say, I'm not bowing down to this. Why? Because you stuck close to Jesus, who wouldn't give in, who wouldn't compromise, who wouldn't make excuses. Men who walk close with Jesus are fearless and courageous.